Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
As we continue our journey in trying to understand King David and his life and his contributions as best we can, one thing that I keep noticing is that greatness doesn't always come from a family with what in the 50s we would have called the life of Riley, Ozzie and Harriet, or if you're a little bit later, the Beaver Cleaver family. Now, of course, we all want a model family to live in and to be part of, to be connected to, but very often in the world, in the Torah, you find very great people coming out of families where there's some bumps over there. The more I look around, the more I see that King David did not have this real cushy-wushy relationship in his family. According to everywhere I look, and even without looking at any other people that explain the Torah, even from the verses themselves, you get the picture that the brothers look down on David, the little scruffy redhead that ran around with the sheep. I mean, initially, when Samuel and Shmuel Hanavi comes to pick the new king, David's father, Yishai, and the brothers, David isn't even there in the lineup. So there was definitely something going on over there. It is definitely clear from our Torah sources that Yishai and David HaMelech's mother, who's got a really great name. I have yet to meet a woman with this name. Her name was Nitzevet Bat Adiel. And they got to stop putting that on Jewish trivia questions so more people know about that. But there seems to have been an up and down relationship between Yishai and Nitzevet Bat Adiel. Now I don't, you know the old issue. I don't know what the kids knew and what the kids didn't know, but there were definitely some problems there. And in the Mamloes and the Torah anthology, they indicate that there really was points where Yishai really was ambivalent about his relationship and his closeness with David, the younger son, and it got to the point where we need Nitzevet Bat Adiel. She had to really straighten things out. She was a mom that really had to clarify a lot of different things to set things straight. She was a major unifying force. So it's just a little amazing. We all try to get the best marriage, the best family circle that we could possibly get, because we want the best possible outcome. But just sometimes you study someone like David, who didn't have the smoothest life, who didn't have the smoothest upbringing, and he yet is going to excel, and he's going to accomplish. I've been teaching a long time, and it's hard to replace a good family background, but I do have to say, the verse from King David that Dr. Bruce always liked to research, which we say in Elul, Ki avi v'imi yazavuni v'Hashem yasfeni, my parents have deserted me and God gathered me in, which Dr. Bruce and I and maybe Mr. Slim and Mr. Schneider also, we did find a number of different ways to understand it. But when you learn about King David's life, I mean, you begin to see some of this, because he didn't exactly have the perfect family. But I have met some students where King David's prediction became so true. Shockingly, I've had some orphan students that somehow God sent people in their life, give the orphans some of the credit and give God the rest of the credit, and they turned out to be very, very well-mannered people. But we just have to keep that in mind, that King David did not necessarily have everything going for him. We have to have an appreciation of that. But, in the end, just going back to his father, not only is King David not the easiest fellow to understand, his dad, not his mom. If you get the whole story of his mom, she's a little bit straighter to understand. Yishai was not such an easy person to understand either. In the end, things work out. There's a beautiful acronym. Yishai's name is spelled Yud, Shin, Yud, and there's an acronym that they attach to that. Yud, Shin, Yud stands for Yachad Shiftei Yisrael. Yud for Yachad, Shin for Shiftei, Yud for Yisrael, the togetherness of the tribes of Israel. So it's a nice meaning that you see. The Torah loves to go into people's names, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. But when you really would study Jesse's life, not everything there, I mean, you think David's complicated. There were some complications with his father also, maybe not as dramatic, but at the end, the Gemara says, he is in a list of people that entered Olam Haba without sins. And everybody asks, what? How could the Gemara make such a statement and put Jesse in the list that he entered heaven, a sinless man? What about this? What about that? And they work on it. I'm just saying, for David to become David, nothing was simple. I think you may have heard a thought very often that to be a true leader, that maybe you're better off coming from a troubled background because you'll be able to deal with people. Let me give you an example. I worked with a woman who was a religious Roman Catholic. Brilliant woman, a science teacher. I don't want to say her last name. I'll just say her first name was Rose. And she was from a Latin background. She was educated by nuns. So you can picture what this is. She was educated by nuns in Puerto Rico. I think I said that right. Did I say that right, Puerto Rico? Mm-hmm. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. That's the way we have to study together. Puerto Rico. My gosh. And that you did that without the accent. That was great. Rose had a lousy marriage. Rose had a really, really lousy marriage. So what do? You go for counseling to your priest, to your father. Now Rose and I sometimes would have religious discussions. Not fights, discussions. We shared the same classroom. One day Rose came in, shaking her head, and she says, Harry, I don't agree with everything with you Jews, but there's something that you Jews definitely have right. Your rabbis are married. That's great. She says, look at me. My husband and I can't get along. And what do? What do they tell us to do in a church? Go get counseling from your priest. He's not married. He's never been married. How is a guy who's never ever been married supposed to settle my marital problems? And she had some really good problems. Her husband was an alcoholic. Don't ask. She says, you Jews, your rabbis are supposed to be married. So, if you go to a rabbi for counseling, it's not perfect, but she says, you Jews, you have a chance that maybe the guy understands what you're talking about. My priest doesn't have a clue, and he's supposed to solve my problems. This gets better. Amen. The counseling didn't work. They had to get divorced. Now, if you're a real religious Christian person, that's a no-no.
Catholics.
And that in some groups, they will just grin and bear it, and they're stuck, depending where you're from. So then she began to like the Jews even more, because her church didn't want her to get divorced. She had to change churches. So once again, Rose came in and she said, Harry, you say there's one God, I say there's three. But whatever it is, you're right. You Jews, you're not happy about divorce, but you allow divorce because that's the reality. You have to have divorce. You have to have it. Because I don't know about everything else, but you Jews got that one right. You allow divorce when there's good cause. I had to change churches, so she said, that's score up another one for you Jews over there. So what I'm getting back to is Rose's point was, in her religion, the priest didn't have really family experience, so she didn't feel that he understands my needs. She says, the rabbi, it's not perfect, but he has a shot. So, it might work out nicely that David had some trouble in his life and his upbringing. It may help him to understand people later. May help. All right. Before I let Rabbi Singer lead the way, I want to tell you something I saw this week. I think I've told you fellas that I used to volunteer a lot for Fort McHenry, and I may start doing that again. And you should know, everyone, the cannons aren't loaded anymore because we get along, with the British and all that. But you should know, every once in a while, and this is documented, if you Google hard enough, you'll find it. Every once in a while, they do find something dangerous. There was one day, all the volunteers were contacted, don't come in today. What happened? They were digging to make a new visitor center, and they found live ordnance from the Civil War era. So here, there was some kind of loaded powder keg in the ground, been there since 1860, whatever. They found it, and this was 2004. They kicked everybody out. Now, you're all Marylanders. Now listen, if this happened at Fort McHenry, where are you going to call the nearest bomb squad from? You want to guess? It starts with an A.
Annapolis.
I'm sorry. They called somebody 5 minutes more away.
Aberdeen.
Aberdeen. They called in the Army bomb experts from out. They threw out everybody and said, "Don't come near this place."
They actually had on the water. They also had a restricted zone around Fort McHenry then during that time, where you couldn't, if you were on a boat, you couldn't.
Oh, it happened to you.
Yeah, that's what I said. I remember the situation. You couldn't come within 200 meters of the of Fort
So
McHenry.
the Aberdeen people came, and one was dead, and the other one was still dangerous. And the Rangers, told us that they safely transported it and detonated off someplace. Just for the record, now they say we're safe. You get the boat updates. You'll comfort us. The Rangers told me there are probably thousands of unexploded balls in the water in the Patapsco River right next to Fort McHenry.
Mortars.
But they say it's supposed to be safe. But they said every once in a while there's dredging, and they pull up balls from the War of 1812 all the way back. So David, you know where all these warnings are. You will tell us when not to go there, So
they had the nice, beautiful red, white, and blue buoy, which was where Francis Scott Key was. When he came. All around there's got to be all kinds.
Oh, they invited me to come on that. Oh, I'm glad you got to go there. The Coast Guard loves you. So let me tell you what happened with Fort McHenry, which will lead us into King David, which is a slippery slope. Somebody spent a few $1 million, and it was your money and Elliot's money and everybody else's money to redo the Fort McHenry Visitor Center. It used to be this Hamish little visitor center. It was very nice. When you walked in, you got a friendly greeting from the gift shop lady and from the ranger. And when you walked in, there was a map of the battle, and there was a Congreve rocket over there, which was old-time British rocket fireworks, which had lousy aim, hardly hurt anybody, but scared the living daylights out of. Gentlemen, how close is Bladensburg to this town? Bladensburg. What?
Maybe 20 miles.
Maybe 20 miles. All right. The Congreve rocket was used. The British scared the living daylights out of most of the Americans, not all, at Bladensburg. And after they saw these Congreve rocket sparklers, most of them ran away. Not all of them, but that was a very embarrassing thing in Bladensburg.
The rocket's red glare. It's in the
that's
Francis
it.
Scott Key
Right. So all sources tell you that they didn't. Those things were not very accurate. I mean, once in a while they hit a few people. They were more scary. Their bark was worse than when their bite. Well, anyway, that was the old VC Center. You walked in, you saw that. It was very, very nice. But of course, we know that in the world, if it's good, if it's not fixed, you need to break it anyway, right? And that's what you do, and you spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money, right or wrong, and you build a zillion dollar visitor center. And of course, after they build it, you have a whole bunch of people who say, including me, I really like the old one better. So anyway, in Gettysburg, they spent, it used to be free. The visitor center Gettysburg used to be free. And then they spent zillions of dollars, knocked that down, made a new one, state of the art. Now there's a charge, and a lot of people like the old one better.
Yep.
Why? Because the antique experts said a visitor center storing ancient things from the Civil War needs to be very, very dark. Right? because our scientists will explain to us with all the molecules what's going to go wrong if it's too bright. So they want everything in Gettysburg to be in the dark, and it is if you've been there. So a lot of people say, all due respect to the scientists, I like the old visitor center with the bright lights better. But let me tell you what happened. I was in Fort McHenry this week. I went to say hello to my old friends, see if I had a little time to volunteer, and they changed everything. Now there's a trend. Now you may like the trend, and that's your business and that's your opinion. But some people like it, some people don't, some people don't know what to do. On the wording of the plaques of the history of Fort McHenry, there's something different than before, and I've seen this in many historic places. Let's go real close. Sandy Point Park, 10 minutes from the shoal?
Yeah.
Okay. If you take a walk with your friends on Sandy Point Park, there's been a plaque there the past few years. Now, those who are longtime Marylanders, when they think Sandy Point, they think Sandy Point Ferry Terminal, before there was a bridge. There are people who think back a little bit what there was. That's what a lot of people think about. But there was some issue there with slavery, so they have a plaque, one of those fancy plaques about slavery, and they have a lot of detail there about something that happened not far from there. And when you read it, it just gets you angry. It just gets you angry. You want to go up to someone and say, did you ever own slaves? Your grandfather ever owned slaves? I'm going to kill you. Now, I have no connection to this, because my mother's side of the family came here in 1910. My father was a Holocaust survivor. He didn't get into 38. The Karp family, didn't have anything to do with the slaves. But still, when you read it, the way it's written, you just get mad. You just get mad. Now, some people would say, that's an accurate portrayal. Other people would say, is it an accurate portrayal? Is it? Isn't? Do you have to write it like that? Is it a good idea or a bad idea? You can fight about it all day. All right. But this is what I saw in Fort McHenry, and you may notice, and you can have your own opinion, you don't have to listen to me, but you will notice the old-fashioned plaques that they had in history places, right or wrong, had a different tone than the ones now. Now, last time I was here, we mentioned a little something about Dolly Madison. So today we have to mention something about her husband, James Madison. So and we all know that President Madison, that brilliant man, responsible for a lot of things in this country. He wasn't perfect, but pretty good for a little fellow with an interesting hairdo and a very, very loud, dominant wife. He was the president during the War of 1812. Okay. Any history book you're going to look at doesn't laud him as being the mighty commander-in-chief when it comes to managing wars. I don't think you're going to look whatever you want. 200 historic sources, wherever they come from. I don't really think you're going to find a book that says the brilliant James Madison who wrote this and wrote that. And if it wouldn't be for James Madison, it's debatable if you'd even have the shul all together. There are a lot of liberties that he fought for with Jefferson and all these kind of things. Not against Jefferson, but no one depicts him as a masterful commander-in-chief like some of our other presidents. All right, like you wouldn't put him like in the same thing with Eisenhower, or any of those kind of fellas, whoever you like as a military commander. Nobody does. Fine. Everybody admits that he wasn't the big military president. Brilliant man, but not a brilliant, not the big military guy. However, the plaque that they have there commenting on Madison and the War of 1812 and how he managed and mismanaged it has a very, very negative, almost insulting tone. I'm not even related to him. But I did go to see his house, Montpelier in Virginia. Very pretty house. But anyway, you can form your own opinion about it, but I never saw anything like this. And I've seen a lot of different things about past presidents, and we know, some of them maybe deserve a spanking. But Madison, we know nobody's perfect, but Madison did a lot of great things. He is from the fathers of the country, and it just shook me up a little bit to see somebody who in many ways is more a father of our country than Washington is, just to see the way it was written. Now you can go there, you can look at it, you can tell me, Karp, you're 100% right, or Karp, you don't have a clue what you're talking about, you're too sensitive, and whatever it is. But it just seemed to be, it just seemed a little bit pushy to have, somebody who didn't know the man, who didn't live in those times, and a man who did so much for this country. And fine, he's not perfect. Yeah, he had slaves. Fine, we could talk about that another time. I know someone's waiting for me to say that. But anyway, it just seemed a little bit much to have someone write so negative about the man, as if it bothered them. I can't have a good founding father. I got to take a shot at you. So Rabbi Wein, you should live and be well, has a saying. I don't want to overquote Rabbi Wein. Bruce, if I do, throw a shoe at me. The CIA isn't here. But anyway, but he is up from our Gedolim. Rabbi Wein says there's an old Yiddish saying, As is Christel sich Yiddel sich, which just means if something is heavily going on in the non-Jewish world, we're going to pick up some of that, whether we realize it or not. That's just the way it is. So I was saying, as Jews, that a lot of our life does have a lot to do with respecting great people. Jews and Goyim. Famous guy, Eov was not Jewish, okay? Eov was not Jewish. There are some non-Jews that are up there too. So it says we just have to be a little bit careful because we run so much of our life on great men and women from before. So if there's a tendency in the world, to knock down founding fathers and heroes, we just have to watch it, because we may want to do that also. It's fine to question, but you just have to watch yourself. Because I've read a lot on Madison, things like that, but I never saw anybody take such a shot at President Madison like that.
Washington be burned. His poor action in choosing the wrong people as generals led to the destruction of Washington.
Right. No, nobody says he was a masterful commander. He definitely made mistakes. Just the way it was written, Doc. But there's no question the man made mistakes, and that's why I say I wouldn't even put him. Grant is given a shikker, but still, as far as the military command, it clearly, most books write, Doctor, that the man, he was brilliant in making documents and laws, but he didn't really want to be president. It really wasn't his thing. But there's a way to say it. You could say it like this. You could say it like that. This particular plaque. Next time you go to Fort McHenry, you'll see it, and you'll tell me what you think. It just seemed a little bit harsh on him. That's all. So just we Jews, we have to have our questions. We have a right to have our questions, but we just have to watch out because the carryover from the world to us, we just have to be careful. There's a lot of good things to pick up from the world, but we have to watch out for this. So let Rabbi Singer come and visit us. Now, Rabbi Singer says, Rabbi Norman Singer, Yenison Yehuda from Williamsport says, if you want to have appreciation of King David, now I'm going to want to go back and forth, seeing verses and seeing general great things about King David, so to help us juggle back and forth, to try to help us to figure things out wherever our brain rolls around. He says, you want to appreciate King David. All right. So probably his big claim to fame is Tehillim, is Psalms. So he starts off with this, says Rabbi Singer. Rabbi Singer gave this sermon in April of 1984, but it's still pertinent. Says Rabbi Singer, Psalms has a special place in both Jewish and Christian liturgy. And if you're wondering, why did he say that for? It's because he wrote this sermon in the Williamsport newspaper. And most people in Williamsport are not Jewish, so, that may be why he wrote it that way. But he wrote it that way. He says, look, if you look in the Hebrew prayer book, you have psalm after psalm after psalm all over the Hebrew prayer book. Tehillim is the largest book in the Hebrew scripture. It has 150 chapters. And it has the tiniest chapter, which is just 2 verses, Kuf Yud Zayin, and it has the longest chapter, Kuf Yud Tes, with the Aleph Beis, which we use when somebody's really terribly sick. And of course, that very large psalm has 176 verses, 176 is a magic number. The biggest Gemara, Baba Basra, is 176. Parshas Naso is 176. So the big one in Tehillim is also 176. So here's what I mentioned before. He says, to the world, the most familiar passage from King David is Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. Right? You see it on TV shows. It's all over the place, everywhere. But Rabbi Singer says, you know what? 15. 15 is the one you want to know. That ought to be the better known one. He says, you know, the verses, and we'll share a little bit of it, the verses of Tehillim, Tesvav 15, are so impressive that the Talmud sees it as a summary of the whole Torah. There's a Gemara in Makos. I'm sure you heard of it, where it talks about different great prophets giving a summary. This prophet made it in 3 things, this said in 1 things, and King David 11 things. They're giving a summary. So David's in that list, and this kapitel Tehillim, this chapter 15, is in there as it being a very, very good short summary. I don't want to call it Reader's Digest, but that was a lot of trouble. Reader's Digest Bible. I don't want to get started with that. But anyway, he says it's a very good microcosm of the Torah, of all the mitzvahs. Now, what's so great about Psalm 15? So Rabbi Singer says Psalm 15 is just 5 verses. That's it. 5 verses, but he says it ought to be the most famous one. It has 11 essential principles of human conduct. Now, we have to go back to the 70s. Remember, before God created Art Scroll, there was Cincino. Remember Cincino? Used to dominate all our shuls. Cincino. Good old Cincino. For all the way going back to Italy with that nice tower picture. So Rabbi Singer says, if you look in the Cincino editions of Tehillim, chapter 15 from King David is called God's Guest and God's Gentleman. That's the introduction to Tehillim 15. That in this piece of Tehillim, King David is going to describe God's guest and gentleman. Now, he says the leading virtues referred to in Tehillim Tesvav are a philosophy of and for life. It's an agenda for everyday living. And there's been a comment. Now, Rabbi Singer wasn't sure who said it, but this is the quote. A revolution would be created in any society if they would just carry out the principles of Psalm 15. So you could fix the world. I know Tikkun Olam, people say you can fix the world with recycling and being green. That's all fine and great. But he says there's a quotable quote that the more societies you could get to really work on the principles in Psalm 15, it would be a whole different world, and we'll share some of them. Many of the problems the world faces today are a result of allowing vile persons to seize power and to abuse it. So he's just trying to say that if more and more people would make a model of Psalm 15, maybe we could have a little bit less of that power seizing and abuse. Now, enters Rabbi Hirsch. See, that's the fun thing about Rabbi Singer. He just likes everybody. What could I tell you? Maybe it's something that happens to you if you live in Western Pennsylvania. I don't know. He quotes Rabbi Hirsch. Rabbi Hirsch says, "No, wait a second. This Psalm 15 is very, very interesting. It starts off saying, 'Lord, who shall dwell in your tabernacle?'" That's how it starts. Psalm 15, Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem, mi yargur ba'ahalecha, who's going to live in your tent? Mi yishkon bahar kodshecha, who can dwell in your holy mountain? Okay, that's how it starts. So you get the picture that after that introduction, David's going to just talk about tefillin and tzitzis and going to minyan and all those kind of mitzvahs between man and God. Rabbi Hirsch says that's what you're going to expect. But then it opened with that, and then it starts discussing man's obligation towards his fellow man. And David emphasizes that if a person aspires to draw closer to Hashem, you're not going to do that very well till you're acceptable to God's children, his fellow human beings. So David introduces it, says Rabbi Hirsch, you want to dwell in God's house? You want to be a ben bias by God? Okay, I tell you what you got to do. Excel in the following list of things of getting along with mankind, and you'll do it in tandem with your mitzvahs. Be real good at getting people to like you, and God will like you too. Now, Rabbi Singer says, just in case you're not convinced, and the greatness of Psalm 15, and it's very short, I'll share some with you in a moment, and when you review Psalm 15, you've all done it sometime in your life, you may ask yourself, and you should ask yourself, David makes those statements, that makes a great human being? Did he live up to that himself? Or not? Dun dun dun. And if the answer is 50-50, you're going to say, wow, bold of him to write about that. But you'll hear what it says, and then you'll make your own thoughts. Rabbi Singer says, there's a Gemara in Makos. Rabbi Gamliel was reading Tesvav, and when he got to the end, he started crying. Rabbi Gamliel, he himself is an interesting Jew, but that's another. If we ever have a discussion about rabbis that could be a little bit too tough on their colleagues, but he was a great leader, but he also was not the easiest. I begin to wonder, Bruce, if there's any great leader that wasn't, that wasn't complicated to understand. But all right, well, Bruce, you're a great leader and you're really complicated. But anyway, Rabbi Gamliel, when he would read Kapitel Tesvav, David ends off, Ose Eile, whoever does these things in my little list here, my short list, Lo Yimo La'olam, won't ever slip. You do these things, you won't ever slip. Rabbi Gamliel started crying. He says, what does this mean? It sounds to me that it says that if you perform well at all the virtues in this chapter, you will never stumble. But if one of those virtues you're not so good at, you're going to stumble. Rabbi Gamliel says, oh no, I'm good at some of them and not all of them. I'm going to stumble. I'm going to get all messed up. David's condemning me. And he would cry. So his colleagues mollified him, and I believe Rabbi Akiva was there too in the Gemara, and they discussed with him exactly how to read the text, because, gentlemen, sometimes you can go to other great people to try to explain things to us, but sometimes you gotta just really figure out what the Hebrew's saying over there. And they had a discussion, linguistically and grammatically, what exactly David was saying. And you'd be amazed. The Gemara itself is short on the linguistic analysis of the last verse, but the commentaries, I could not get over how much linguistic, I'm saying linguistic, not linguini, so much linguistic discussion on exactly what the words say. It was just amazing. I got lost in it, but they got very busy analyzing Rabbi Akiva. And when they finished the discussion, they told Rabbi Gamliel, David is giving a list, and if you excel at least one of these virtues, you won't slip. All right. Now there's a lot of questions on, what do you mean you won't slip? If you're very ethical and you keep the mitzvahs, you'll never slip? What are you talking about? I know very good people who do slip. I know rotten people who don't appear to slip. Okay, that we can discuss separately. There's plenty of Torah on that. But I just want to share with you what it says over there. And then you're going to wonder, gee whiz, King David wrote that? How old was he when he wrote that? Because everybody says when Samuel anoints him and he gets the Spirit of Hashem, whatever that means, right away, he already was pumping Tillim. But then you start saying, gee, how old was he when he wrote that? When did he write that in his life? How much is that him? How much is that as God inspiration? And if he wrote it early, later on, should he have changed it? Should he have not changed it? So as Judge Brandeis used to say to Oliver Wendell Holmes, let's check the facts. I just want to mention to you, if you read the history of Justice Brandeis and Oliver Wendell Holmes, So Brandeis, Alav Shalom, a lot of times used to say, Justice Holmes, we must examine the facts to come up with the proper decision of law and justice. Let's look at the facts. So Oliver Wendell Holmes was a brilliant man, and he would say, Justice Brandeis, but I have no patience for the facts. And Brandeis would have to keep staring. Oliver Wendell. If you ever want to have fun, if you study the relationship of Oliver Wendell Holmes and Justice Brandeis, it's very, 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 very interesting. I won't call them the odd couple, but they're just very, very interesting how this Jewish man, nominated by President Wilson, who came under so much fire entering the Supreme Court, became so buddy-buddy with Oliver Wendell Holmes. I can't swear to it, but it's easy to find out. I think most of the time when Brandeis dissented, I think most of the time Oliver Wendell Holmes was with him. But we're going to go after Justice Brandeis, Alav Shalom, the Yid from Kentucky and Boston, and let's see the facts, what it says. And again, it's Psalm 15, so you could look it up wherever, however, and think of what you want. So King David's not, and again, Rabbi Singer says this is a major key to understanding David, and he says this should get the Oscar. Is that insulting King David, saying he should have an Oscar? Maybe he should get a Shlomi. Okay. But anyway, he should get a Weissblum. All right, anyway, he says like this. Mizmor David, song from David. Hashem miyagur ba'alecha Hashem. Who can live in your tent? I'll try to keep it more simple, because Dr. Freeman's looking at me. Mi yishkom b'har kadshecha. Who was able to dwell in the mount, your holy mountain? All right, here's the requirements. Now remember, Rabbi Gamliel thought you needed every single one to have insurance from slipping. Rabbi Kiva and everyone else in discussion reanalyzed it, and linguistically they concluded excel in as much as you can, but if you're really, really good at one of them, God will help you not to slip too much. Number one, Holech Tamim. If you're a person that walks with perfection, what does that mean? Ufoel tzedek, and you try to do righteous justice. V'dover emes b'vavo, and you always speaking truth in the heart. Lo rogo al lishono, the person doesn't have gossip, lashon hara, tale-bearing on their tongue. Lo oselarei ura, they don't do to their neighbor bad. V'cherpa lo'inosa al krovo, and shame he does not bear on his relative. A lot of different understandings. A simple one is if he sees his close ones are bearing shame or pain, he can't look away from it. He or she has to get involved, Rabbi, to help out.
Would you translate Tom as perfection?
That's why I stopped and said we'd have to really discuss and make a contrast with Noach.
I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Right, what Taman means.
With Ishtam,
right,
yeah,
right. That's a big discussion because Taman can mean perfect. Taman can mean pure, simple faith. Right. That's a whole study in itself, and that's a real big linguistic.
But you think in this usage, the best definition is perfection?
No, it's not, because Rabbi Kiva told Rabbi Gamliel that it's not.
Okay.
Right. No, I just did it. It's a standard one. Okay. Right. I mean, a lot of times you hear Jewish people say, she's such a tamimistic girl, you should go out with her. And you know that doesn't mean she's perfect. You know, it means she's straight. She tries to do the right thing.
Down to earth, good Jewish girl.
Yeah. Right. Nivza be'ein of nimas. Things that are disgusting in God's eyes are also disgusting to Him. V'yirei Hashem yechabed, and those who fear Hashem will be honored. Okay. He has a few other things here, but if you look at the words and the requirements over here, you want to store in your mind and say, wow, how well did David live up to his own guidelines? And it says here, if you're good at this, you don't slip. What is this don't slip business? Did he slip? Is there a comeback? So the thing I'll leave you with is pretty much everywhere you look, and this was a big thing from the linguistic analysis of it, is that King David wasn't saying that I'm giving you a guarantee that you'll never, ever, ever slip up. It means you won't slip and stay down. As long as you're good in as many of these things as you can, you won't slip and stay down for the count. You'll slip and you get a chance to come back up. All right, so in the future weeks as we study King David, we have to keep coming back to this and saying, gee whiz, David, are you really sure you want to keep 15 in there? How'd you do with that? It's sort of like a self-made report card. So we'll keep working on it together. And at some point, I hope we figure it out, because he is Rissa's grandson and he is Mashiach Zaidi. To be continued. Yeah.
How come I should test Vov in some Sidorim before Hoidu in some Musaf Sidorim?
Because they must have been hanging out with Rabbi Singer. You're right. They must have loved it. Let me take a look at Tamim Minhagim. Let me look that up.
I don't know why they have it. A lot of Musaf Sfarad have it before Hoidu. Well, they have Yedid Nefesh too.
Rabbi Singer would say, because that's the best example of a pattern, a game plan for your life. So Rabbi Singer would love that. But let me take a look. I have a safer at home that'll answer that. Thank you for that homework. Everyone have a safe Sunday, snow or not.